All right, guys, I think we're streaming. Let's see here. If so, I should be on this mic here.
Hello.
And this should be the bonus stream, the second bonus stream for June. Yeah, it looks like we're going. We got a connection.
Great.
Guys, welcome to the second bonus stream for June. We told you guys we're gonna shoot for doing 2 bonus streams for our Patreon supporters who are $5 and up. And I know some of you guys probably snuck in here because I had this video listed as public. That's okay. Congratulations on slipping through the cracks, guys. You're welcome to. Thanks for joining us. We were enjoying a couple pre-show stogies here, having a few.
For the
smokes.
people who snuck in, buy something from Manscaped or something and use our promo code.
This is and the cigars are from Tarazona, Nicaraguans. And there's a friend of mine, 7th group friend of mine, got me these nice cigars in this cool box. And you open this bad boy up, it's got 5th Special Forces group, and the label is 5th group as well. It's pretty sweet. The cigars are pretty good, man.
Yeah, they are.
So speaking of which, who's got that? Can I see that Zippo, please? Thank you, sir. So, guys, there's 12 people watching live. We'll monitor the live chat, and I'll take a look at the Patreon as well. You tell us, what do you want to talk about? I know some of you wanted to hear the Gary Busey story, and Dave and I can tell that one if you want. Is this?
Yeah, that's you.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, the one that's chewed on is me.
No, I made sure that I kept them straight.
I cut mine short, so I know that's mine.
It's
You guys want to swap?
Yeah, that one's mine.
You guys want to
snort
cross
smoke?
swords? It's not a big deal.
you
Don't ask, don't
you
tell.
don't have a sloppy mouth. Actually,
So,
Don't say it. We're live. Oh. That'd be hilarious. Someone just commandeers the Patreon.
yes, that would be hilarious,
Yeah.
Steve, if that happened.
Well, it'd be sad and then hilarious.
I think so. Yeah. Anyway,
So, Gary Busey.
yes.
This whole story begins when actually a fan of the podcast is one of Gary Busey's assistants, reached out to me, asked if we'd like to meet Gary. So, of course, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Of course we could. And Gary was in Manhattan. He was doing a play. He was in like the pre-production for a play. It was Almost Human? Was the name of the play?
That may have been it. Yeah, I mean, it was about the play was an interesting premise. It was about
cool.
God as like a CEO kind of, and
It's creating Earth and humanity.
yeah,
Oh, wow.
and Gary Busey, of course, played God, and then Satan was sort of like the executive that worked his ass off, but everything was handed to Jesus. The
Oh,
golden
so he's
boy.
disgruntled. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
I
was
like
disgruntled.
that. Yeah.
Because Jesus was like a surfer dude, kind of, or a
Yeah, he's a hippie.
he was a hippie who
Nepotism,
just
bro.
didn't,
Yeah.
exactly nepotism. So it was interesting.
So we met Gary in a hotel lobby for a cup of coffee. And it was late at night too. It was like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
But Gary is sober, so like we weren't having drinks or anything like that. And suffice to say, that was an interesting meeting.
well, so I mean, first off, like Jack got there before I did, and I don't think that Gary knew that I was coming. He knew Jack was coming, right? So when I showed up and I sat down, like Gary looked at me like
you were just
"Who the
some dude."
Fuck are you?
Oh, wow.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
We mentioned something about it, but
Yeah.
he didn't. It didn't click.
Yeah. And it's interesting because for those of you who don't know anything about Gary, is he's always been like a little crazy. And
Yeah.
I don't mean that in like any kind of insulting way. I just mean
He's out there.
he's always been like, kind of pushing the edge and whatnot. But he also many years ago had a motorcycle accident and
Yeah.
suffered a head injury. And I believe the resulting effect was that is he didn't really have the ability, right, to control. Like he said what was on his mind, I believe, right?
It's almost like a form of Tourette's or something. That
but it's not. Yeah,
there's not a lot of filter.
It's not. Yeah, there's just. It's not cursing. It's just like there's no filter. He says it.
It's kind of like Asperger's, but not really, because Asperger's, you have like no filter and you're just blunt and you say how you feel like right away without like really thinking about anybody else's feelings.
So it's kind of like that, but it was due to, I think, so due to his motorcycle accident. So as the night went on, and then Gary found out who I was. He became more comfortable, and yeah, we had a good time. I mean,
He's a funny guy.
he's
too.
he's really interesting too. He's funny. He's interesting. I mean, and then at some point, because like anybody who isn't a veteran or isn't really into veteran stuff, like you get the different units confused and things like that. And he asked us again, like what we were, and so we told him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I met some SEALs a while ago, and they gave me a coin and blah blah blah." I'm like, "Oh, the SEALs gave you a coin?" I said, "How many Rangers ever given you a coin?" And he's like, "No, And so I gave him, and I said, "Okay." And I pulled out my wallet, and I said, "Well, this is the coin I carried with me through Afghanistan, through Iraq. Like this coin has been with me ever."
Yeah.
And I gave it to him, and like, man,
Yeah, you made his day.
He was so moved that I got embarrassed, because I don't know how to
Sure.
sort of deal with that. It's you're like, oh, okay, like
Cool.
yeah.
And Gary is like super like pro-military. Like he loves the soldiers. Thinks it's like super cool. So yeah, that Dave gave him that. Like it meant something to him.
Yeah. It was.
Gary and I, like he like talked to. I think you were there, Dave. Like walked me through like kind of his story about how like felt like he was in a living hell when he was addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
And it was just horrible for him. And he had that crash, and he had a near death experience. And like he told me about how he saw angels, and like these angels came to him. They were like geometric shapes, like triangles and spheres and things like that. And they came and talked to him, and they were turning colors and stuff. And then of course talking about the war. Me and Gary shared a moment, man. Gary was like talking about it, and he's like, "So what's it like over there? What's it like in the war?" And I was trying to explain to him a little bit about what at least my experience was like. And Gary's like, "Well, you know what? You gotta kill them all and let God sort them out. It's war." And like he looked right into my eyes, or I should say, he looked right through my eyes. Looked right through me. I was like, "Whoa, man! Like
That's fucking trippy."
I was like, "Yeah, we shared a moment right there."
It's So I was sorry. I'm going back in my emails, through my email to see when it was we met with him.
It was over a year ago now.
Yeah, it was like in April. And here's the thing: is that we hadn't had a lot of people on the show at that point in time.
It was still at the point where it was me and you bullshitting and having drinks and yeah.
And Gary was actually going to come on our show, but their play actually got canceled, so he left town. But he was going to be one of our first guests.
He did invite us to. It wasn't. I don't think we were at the opening night of the play, but it was like the second or third performance of it.
Yeah.
And the play got panned by the critics. I'm not a Broadway critic, okay? Don't talk to me about that. I'll just say that he invited us, and I went there. I sat down and I watched it. I thought it was entertaining and it was fun. And I'm not a theater critic or a musical guy, but I enjoyed it, and I appreciated him inviting us there. But yeah, it got canceled, I think, after like 5 shows or something like that.
Yeah. So that was our near brush with having
Gary Busey
on our show.
We can maybe revisit that. See if he's in New York.
I think if you ever were, I think he'd be willing to come on.
It's like one of those things where like if you keep trying to schedule it, it's never going to happen. I feel like you just got to catch them in the moment.
Yeah.
Like, Gary, sit down in front of this Zoom right now and talk to these guys for 20 minutes, and he'd probably do it no problem. Like, whoa, hey, what's up?
And it'd be fucking magic.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's the thing is you don't with a guy like that. You don't have to worry about conducting the interview because he will talk and he will be entertaining. You know, he'll just.
It's like I saw David Letterman once talking about when he'd have Hunter S. Thompson on his show, on The Late Show.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, you know, you'd invite Hunter on the show. Sometimes he'd show up. Sometimes he wouldn't. You never really know what's going to happen. He was like, when he was here and you'd have him on set, you could hear the second hand on the clock. Like, because it was like a countdown until something crazy happens with Hunter. That's kind of what it's like with Gary. At least that was my impression.
Yeah, I didn't know it was because he had a motorcycle accident. I thought he was just like super eccentric. Because I remember when he was like an actor back in the day.
Dude, Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
He was the
Predator.
Yeah.
Predator 2. And you think he's just playing a character in those movies, but he's kind of like that. You know? I'm not saying he's a villain, but he's kind of a real eccentric guy.
You know who else has gotten eccentric? I'm sure these guys would battle for parts too back in the day. Is Nick Nolte.
Yeah.
He's kind of like weirded out a little bit. Cause I remember like Blue Chips, like movies like that. He was like a leading guy.
Oh yeah.
And now he's like got this voice like he's been smoking cigarettes for like 60 years.
Who's the one? Quaid.
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid or Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid. He like with the Trump stuff, he started coming like really like.
Oh, did he?
He like really undone. Where like he was posting stuff on social media, and you're like, bro, like somebody get this guy help, like please.
I think Dennis Quaid too was posting stuff.
Really?
Like,
well, on the flip side of that, is it Michael Rappaport?
Yeah.
He was like doing the anti-Trump stuff, but like real like.
Off the
Like,
rails.
oh, you fuck, you know.
Yeah,
like,
it's just ridiculous.
It's like
it's not even funny.
Like, nobody honestly cares about your politics. We
don't give a fuck.
In movies, like do
not give a fuck.
He's become like a talking head now. He's got like a podcast and all that shit. He does more like podcast stuff, content stuff like that than he does like acting.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
It's like a second coming. He's got like 2 million followers on Instagram and stuff. So like I'm sure people eat that shit up, even though it's not funny. Like, what's her face? What's the lady's name who's doing the lip syncing at Trump?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I don't remember her
I can't remember her name
but
either.
she got a Netflix special because she was doing lip syncing of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Not because she's a smart writer, which I'm sure she's probably a talented comedian, sure.
And it's like, okay, that's a goofy like YouTube video.
Yeah,
or
it'll
something,
go viral.
But
whatever.
like a special,
Netflix paid her a ton of money, and there was a ton of like stars in the special too.
Really?
Yeah.
You know,
because she doesn't have.
It's interesting because I remember when Bush was president, and like he was the punchline for a lot of comedians, and I mean a lot of those comedians just kind of faded in obscurity as soon as he was out because.
Well, Will Ferrell did Bush.
Yeah.
Well, no, but he did a good impression.
Yeah.
I'm talking about people who were just like
bagging on him.
Yeah, bagging on him. That was their routine. I mean, you know, anybody who does good impersonations or impressions of presidents. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's what they do.
Dana Carvey doing the elder Bush.
Yeah.
Daryl Hannah.
Actually, Dana Carvey when he does Biden, it's really funny.
I haven't seen the Biden one.
Well, you know the best. You know the best Trump impersonator.
Trump?
No, Anthony Antamanik, man.
Who's that?
Anthony Antamanik is he had a show on Comedy Central called The President Show where he played Trump. I mean, you should check it out if you want to see some really good acting from a Secret Service guy, or not from a Secret Service guy, but a really good person, you know, acting as a Secret Service guy.
Oh, you're on it.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
Do you have your SAG card?
I'm SAG eligible.
SAG eligible.
Yeah. I was like, he ran it like, well, first off, he's one of the best improvisers alive. No shit. And he would almost, like, very famous people would be on, judges, you know, very famous people. And he, like Supreme Court judges and whatnot, and he would, it was almost like sort of like a Borat or a not Borat, but who was
Like
Sasha
Ali G.
Ali G.
Ali G.
Yeah.
It was almost like an Ali G where he would interview them in character. Now they knew,
They were in on it. Yeah.
but he's just such a great improviser because it started out. So it started out during the election cycle where he would just do a show at Upright
UCB?
UCB,
Yeah.
Upright Citizens Brigade. And, and he asked me, hey, do you want to be my Secret Service guy? So I would just stand in the back, stand behind him and try not to laugh,
Yeah, that's gotta be rough, dude.
And, he had a show, he had a script that he would follow, that he wrote and he'd follow, but he'd also just improvise and go off on tangents. And it was just, he's just a funny human being. So, I mean, even like, whether you hate Trump or love Trump or whatever, he's just a really good.
I mean, you should be able to laugh. Like,
it doesn't matter.
Key and Peele did a great fucking Obama one.
Right.
It was hilarious. Those are some of the funniest things they've done. Like Obama's anger translator or whatever. It's hilarious. And like even like presidents, they should be able to laugh at that. You're the most famous person in the world. You're gonna get shit.
Yeah.
Well, they were saying that was the difference. Like H.W. Bush had Dana Carvey over at the White House, and like he became good friends with Mrs. Bush, I think.
Oh wow.
And meanwhile, like Trump was trying to get DOJ to like prosecute SNL.
Oh, I saw that.
For what?
He was trying to invoke like the fairness doctrine and stuff like this. There's some other equal time statute. Like these are like kind of elapsed laws, and none of them apply to comedy anyway.
Right,
Like,
right.
It has nothing to do with that. And I guess the lawyers were just kind of like, yes, Mr.
Yo,
President.
imagine like Bill Barr, right? He's sitting in his office. I don't love Bill Barr, but like, let's say he's sitting in his office, he get a call from Trump. Like, yo, you got to go after these guys. He's like, I can't go after SNL, dude. Like, I can't do that. I'm sorry.
And that's like one of those things where, like, when you're in the army and like your sergeant major locks you up or something, you just say a bunch of Roger Sergeants until they go away. Like, yes, Mr. President, yes, sir. We'll look right into that. We'll look right into that. We got 10 guys on it. They're working in shifts.
I just find it funny that, for all the alleged trauma, that people went through with Trump, and like we can never, we can't wait till he's out of office and never talk about him again. They're still like
Still talking about
the media cannot get enough
Clicks.
of
You
it.
get clicks, bro.
Exactly.
I don't know how much like the media full stop is still covering. Like that's died like way down.
No, I think like Talking Heads.
But there
specifically.
are certain journalists who like they'll like screen cap his press releases. Like, oh my God, can you believe what he just said? And it's like,
I mean, honestly, though, after 4 years, even before that, it always got me when people are like, can you believe what he says? Like, it's Trump. Are you?
I can't be shocked for 4 years
Just
straight.
yesterday, you asked if I could believe what he said. Like, at what point?
Are we over the shock?
At what point are you over the shock?
I think people, there are like a majority of people that probably get over the shock. They're just like, all right, it's him. He's fucking crazy. He's saying crazy shit.
But it's for me. I just feel as though if you like the president, then no matter who it is, then you're going to write off whatever they do,
Sure.
in whatever way.
If you're like in the fan club,
yeah,
like,
and if you hate them, then you're going to take offense to everything. Or I can't believe he did that. I can't believe Clinton did it. Well, I can't believe Obama did that. I can't believe Trump did that. I can't believe.
yeah.
And then if you like the guy,
They can do no wrong.
they can do no
Right.
wrong. And it's, and that's, I mean, that's kind of how we are as human beings, right? Is our team, your team, yada. Do we have any questions on YouTube or Patreon?
Let's see.
I can't get it either. Whatever.
Okay, I'll log into Patreon in a second. Check. Lassick or Isaac says, Jack, I read that you trained the SWAT team in Iraq. So did you train the men that movie Mosul was based on, the one inspired by a New York article about the Nineveh SWAT? Okay, so Nineveh SWAT could be referring to the SWAT team in Mosul. It could also, because it was like Nineveh province or that general area, it could be referring to the guys I worked with. But I was working with the SWAT team in Tel Afar, which is a city about an hour's drive west of Mosul. And those guys, that SWAT team, did fight in Mosul. I mean, they got pushed out of their city by ISIS. So were all the way down to Baghdad at one point. I think they were fighting in the Anbar Triangle for a while. They fought a lot in the Beji oil refinery, and then heading up north and eventually into Mosul, and then back to their hometown. So, in a sense, yeah, some of those guys were there, and some of them died in those conflicts. Let's see here. What else do we got? Jack and Dave should. Who has the funniest Ranger story? And D should decide the winner.
Man,
you have to think about that one for a minute.
Man, there are some good ones.
There and some not so good ones.
Yeah, nothing incriminating.
Well, the statute of limitations have probably passed.
I get the light.
Yeah. So, is it any Ranger story or something that we specifically did or were involved in?
I know of. I mean, the funniest ones I feel like are the ones that like didn't even happen to me, that they happened to like friends of mine. Like there's this one. We had this one kid who was a little slow, and he deployed to Afghanistan with my platoon. I wasn't there. I think this was while I was in Ranger School. Actually, they were in Afghanistan, and the guy who became my squad leader told his squad, like, look, we're going out on this patrol, we're going out on this mission. It's like 3 days, 3 days. So pack light, just pack like absolutely what you need, like some MREs and a whoopee in your assault pack and ammo, and like that's it. So the time comes to launch for this operation. It's like a ground convoy. And so my squad leader is doing his pre-mission checks, his pre-combat inspections. And so when you do pre-combat inspections, you check your soldiers, make sure that they have all their magazines, the ammos are loaded, they have their medical kit is there, has everything in it that's supposed to be there. Check and make sure they have their compass, they have their chem sticks, they have batteries in their flashlights and their nods, and everything is the way it's supposed to be before you go on a combat mission. So he starts checking this guy, and his assault pack is like this big kind of like boxy shape, and he's like, hey, like, unzip your assault pack. What the fuck do you got in there? And he unzips it, and he has this big box of pancake mix inside it. And he lifts it out. It's just a huge like industrial like thing of pancake mix. And my squad leader says to him like he's like beside himself, like searching for words for a moment here. Like what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck is? Why do you have this? And this private looks at him and he says, Sergeant, I thought you might need some pancake mix.
Oh my God.
And my squad leader just had to like take a walk. He's like, I had to go have a little walk after that. And they kept checking him, and they found like in his mag pouches, he had like Post-it notes shoved in there. Like Post-it notes.
What?
Instead of like magazines. And it turned out that it was some sort of deal where like they sent this kid to the chow hall, or like they sent him doing like milk runs, like to do errands, like picking shit up. And they sent him to like the chow hall, like see what kind of stuff you can get from the chow hall to us. And like he took his assault pack and like oh here have some pancake mix, and like he crams it in there and zips it up, and then just shows up for a mission with none of his shit, and instead pancake mix and Post-it notes shoved. And
like the instructions are like pack kind of light.
Pack light, pack for war, son. We're going into the shit, that kind of thing. We're gonna
be in Afghanistan for 3 days.
Yeah. So like poncho liner, water, food, bullets.
What the fuck? That's crazy.
It's a big box of pancake mix.
It's like you never know when you need pancakes.
You might want.
Yeah, they always say they're smart Rangers and strong Rangers.
You might need some pancakes.
Yeah, dude,
Sergeant.
that's crazy. I want to ask, like, how the fuck does he get through?
Well, needless to say, this is why you do pre-combat inspections, to make sure that you're taking, food and water instead of pancake mix.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you never know, though. I mean, you might just And some guys.
If somebody took a hot plate out with them and some eggs, we might be in business.
You might need to throw that pancake brunch for the village.
Right,
After the op. You never know.
Some mimosas, some pancakes.
Yeah.
A huge.
Sprinkle some strawberries and blueberries.
That's
on
legit
there.
hearts and minds, bro. You guys start whipping up pancakes.
That'd be a huge civil affairs coup.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of funny stories, but like actually two of the funniest actually happened to me all while we were in Panama doing the Green Machine. So it's not
the Jungle Warfare Center.
Yeah, down to Fort Sherman. You used to go down to the in Panama to the Jungle Warfare Center, and the Panama jungle is no joke. Like it's like triple canopy. You have like black palm, which are these trees with these barbs like this long, which they're very thin and they're black. So you have to stop moving at night because you can easily just brush into one or lose your balance and put your hand out for support, and all of a sudden you've got all these like clothes going through. But so we had blanks and BFAs, blank firing adapters, which are they go on the end of your rifle. They're a little box and they screw in, and what they do is when you shoot a blank, it shoots a wax wad, but the gas it's obviously not as strong. The explosion isn't as strong as a real round. So what the blank firing adapter does is it captures the gas in the barrel in order to cycle the gun black, to cycle the weapon, but it also protects anybody from getting hit by that wax, the wad that comes out of the blank. But I think it's wax, whatever. But one night, we're out in the jungle, we're setting up patrol bases, and I had watch. So you move outside the patrol base, and and you stand there for your hour, and then you go wake somebody else up. So I go and I relieve the guy, and and I don't even remember who it was. We'll say it's Smith because I don't remember who. But so then I'm standing there, and about 5 minutes into my watch, 10 minutes into my watch, I hear something moving in the jungle. And I don't know what is in this jungle.
Yeah.
But whatever is moving out there sounds big. And I start getting nervous, right? And it sounds like it's moving towards me. And the thing is you don't want to wake everybody. You don't want to wake somebody up and it be nothing.
Yeah,
that'll be your ass.
Right.
But you also don't not want to wake somebody up if it's something like I don't know if there are fucking lions, tigers, bears.
Fucking
I don't know what
comes
the hell
at
is
you.
in the Panamanian jungle, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm getting more and more nervous as I hear this something heavy moving through the
Sasquatch.
Yeah, the bush. And so I take off my blank firing adapter and I whip out my cleaning kit and I throw a cleaning rod into my weapon, thinking, okay, I mean, this will shoot a cleaning rod, not very hard, but it'll be something,
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and now something is really, getting close. And I keep on, like I've got my night vision, but the triple canopy jungle is too dark to see with night vision. There's no light line, so you have to turn on your little IR flare or whatever. And so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and it's coming. And I'm like, tell somebody what the fuck, and I'm like, what the fuck? And then all of a sudden I hear, Bart, Smith? Oh fuck. And he comes crawling out of the brush. He goes, I just went out to take a piss and I got lost. I didn't want to call out because I didn't want to fucking get smoked.
Oh my.
He was like out wandering in the jungle, but he didn't want to call out because he didn't want to get his bag smoked. So he was just hoping he found our patrol base.
Holy shit, dude.
And
because in the jungle at night, like you can't see your hand in front of your face.
You can't see shit, not even with night vision. Like it's so the canopy's so thick that there's no ambient light, and so you can't see shit. But yeah, it was crazy. And then 2 nights later, so Panama has vampire bat, right? Panama has vampire. 2 nights later, and again, I don't remember who it was next to me, but we'll say it's Smith. Whatever. We're all racked out, and I'm baiting, but I hear, you hit like the jungle floor. I look over, grab my night vision, and and I'm turn on my IR flood, and I see this little fuck bat, like ambling towards Smith. All right, and I'm like, oh, I should tell him. I'm like, now I'll leave it. Now, the way vampire bats work is they lick your skin and they apply an anesthetic so that when they bite you,
that's sweet of them.
Yeah. No pain, no fuss. And so I'm like, I really should tell him, but I really want to see how this plays out, And so I'm sitting there kind of giggling to myself. And so then it gets right up next to him, like, okay, like he'd get rabies, like I shouldn't let this happen. I go, it's Ned. What? Rape giant. What? Giant left biter. What the fuck is that? Dude, the entire fucking patrol base jumps up, and I just sit there and fucking laugh and laugh and laugh. But yeah, so yeah, and then I mean, not when I was in the Rangers, but there's so many fucking funny things that happen on combat ops. I mean, dudes like going in a room and stepping in a toilet in a shithole because they're in the ground, but and coming out with like shit all the way up to their knee, and I mean just crazy stuff. I had a dude one time have a heart attack on target, not one of our guys. One of the people who lived at the house, and his family's like, oh, he hasn't been taking his meds, and then yeah, it was bad, but like just crazy stuff happens.
I got a pick now.
Oh
yeah.
I mean, I like the vampire bat bit, but just if you were to pick $1 million to try and guess what's in that kid's fucking pack.
Oh yeah.
That would not come.
You
to
would
mind.
never pick fucking pancake mix. So like just the fact that it's such a non sequitur, I gotta give it to that.
Oh fuck.
Sorry.
It wasn't even my story really. It was someone else's.
All right,
but
so
it was,
Dave.
It was still.
No, that's okay. The pancake
it was
mix
still. It's still pretty good.
Pancake mix.
Yeah.
Lassick says the story element in military movies or shows where the CIA officer looks down on the operators, like Zero Dark 30 or The Punisher. Where does that come? Is that common or is that a cliche?
I mean, probably both. I mean, like none of these organizations, just these
monoliths.
Yeah, they're not monolithic. Like you have all types of people.
Yeah,
in all of them.
There are dudes like Mark Polymeropoulos who like it sounded like going out with JSOC was like the coolest fucking thing ever for him. Like, whoa, this is fucking badass, and loved it and loved working with those guys. And Sam Faddis, he loved working with military guys also.
And the thing is the type. I mean, because you have that in the State Department, you have that. Say like there are people who are going to look down.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can see that more with like the senior agency dudes who are like, well dressed and went to Yale and and when they have to interact with like some Delta sergeant major, they're probably like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah. And at the same time, there are those Delta dudes who are looking at the CIA,
Yeah, who's this piece of shit? Who's this guy to tell me anything?
Yeah. I mean, when I was contracting or, working with different, even within the same like JSOC element, I might have one, sergeant major treat me like I was just dog shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And another who would go, oh, you're a ranger here. Here's a weapon, just fall in line,
Yeah, it's a high school environment in some regards, like there are some officers. There are some officers in Ranger Battalion who are fucking awesome guys to work with, and there's some who are arrogant pricks who are like
they're punching their ticket.
Yeah, and it's like if we were LURPs in Vietnam, I would have fucking left you out in the jungle, pal.
Yeah, right. We've been doing sniper checks.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's all these organizations they're made up of human beings, and there's really no one way that an individual where
Yeah,
the organization is going to dictate how an individual treats other people.
Yeah, there's dicks everywhere.
Right.
Best small unit tactics books, mill and not mill. I mean, so I don't have my reference books here. They're all at home. The Last 100 Yards is a really good book. And then next to that, of course, the Ranger Handbook. The new handbook is like much better than the one me and you had.
Is it?
Yeah, they've updated it, made it much easier to read and understand.
Yeah.
So those would be my two go-tos. Dave, have you ever seen what happens when you fire a rifle with a cleaning rod in the bore?
No. And no, I have not. I was scared. I was terrified. I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know if it was a gorilla. I didn't know if it was. I had no idea what it was. And I was willing to see what happened when I fired a cleaning rod out of the bore.
Andrew says, regarding Jack's Laos rescue mission article, who did Jack think leaked the story that blew the mission's cover? Did the CIA think the mission was going to be another Operation Eagle Claw? So there are two ways to look at that. And it felt, in a sense, it seems very suspicious to some people that the CIA headquarters got the information back from the reconnaissance of the alleged POW camp back. And then 2 days later, the information somehow leaked to the Washington Post. My understanding is that that information was also briefed to the, it was like the Joint Commission on POW MIA Affairs up at Congress. So the leak could have came from CIA or very well could have came out of Congress, which Congress is notoriously leaky. So the like, I guess you could say conspiracy theory is that the CIA didn't want this mission to happen, that they were trying to cover up that we may have left POWs behind after Vietnam. And so they leaked the story to the press to kill the rescue mission. That's like some super that's like Serpico shit. And I can't say if that happened or not. I don't know who leaked it. But it also very well could have come from Congress. It doesn't necessarily have to be this like super nefarious thing that happened.
Yeah. And another thing is a lot of times, even if the leak were to come, from like if a leak comes from the CIA or from JSOC or from the NSA or whatever, a lot of times it's not coming from that organization at an organizational level. It's coming from somebody within it who either just wants some recognition, wants to
Well, leaks like that are political, because
or the politics of it. Right?
Because if it's not approved at some level, like if the brass has a problem with it, massive counterintelligence investigation will pop off. And then, like, that's when you see like journalists getting hemmed up by like grand juries and shit like that, and like they're going to jail because they won't reveal their sources, and like you see that kind of shit happen. So, but I mean, the truth of the matter is I don't know the facts. So
Jack, as a journalist, what do you think about the government pursuing journalists for those reasons, and a journalist's obligation to protect their sources?
Well, this is the game that gets played, of course. So there is freedom of the press. The government can't really prosecute you for exercising freedom of the press, although there are like some exceptions where they come after people, or they try to pressure them to reveal their sources. And don't quote me on the legalities of all of this. I should probably know more, but it can become a thing where like you're in contempt of court if you won't reveal the source. Mm-hmm. So then you end up getting thrown in the brig until you will, and this whole big rigmarole ensues. But I guess you could say the loophole there is you are constitutionally protected as a journalist to write these stories. Your sources are not constitutionally protected.
Right. So it's like a super gray area.
It can become a gray area. There are some gray areas, but it is kind of black and white. Like I, as a journalist, can publish kind of whatever the fuck I want, and there's really not too much the government can do to me. But if my source, I have sources allegedly in the United States government they can potentially be prosecuted, and like that's pretty black and white in,
Yeah,
in many cases.
I'm talking about charging you with contempt.
I mean, obviously this is like a super contentious issue.
Yeah.
And there are all sorts of agencies and so on that say like the U.S. government should not be prosecuting or legally, harassing journalists. But I think even like editorial boards at like major newspapers understand that their journalists have legal protections, but your sources don't.
Yeah.
And so that's where it becomes incumbent and why it's so important for journalists to protect their sources. And you have to be very, very careful about what you do and how you do it. And I guess just speaking for myself, I'm cognizant of the fact that like, I'm not the type of journalist that like I don't even want top secret documents. Like if you smuggle shit out of some building, don't send it to me. Don't mail it to me. I don't want that shit. Like,
I'll take it.
Like that's not the way I operate. I talk to sources. I cultivate sources. I try to get people to talk to me, and then I write about it. And in writing about it, that it's a different sort of threshold. Like if you are writing, like then the government can always say, "Well, fuck Jack Murphy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. This is fake news. Fuck him." You start publishing documents, you're in a totally different stratosphere.
Right.
It kicks up to the top right away.
Yeah. No, now they have a leak. Like 100% they have a leak, and they can't even pretend they don't have a leak.
Right.
So you start doing that kind of thing, and you're just you're playing a totally different ball game there, and you have to be super, super careful about leaks and leakers. And I mean, I guess I'll probably let other people, comment on that. I'll just say I kind of know what my wheelhouse is and what thresholds I should probably not step past.
And I mean, it can be rare for the government to step in and like deny something, even if it's totally like, even if a person who was that dude who was known, got known as a CIA dude, as a CIA, and was like in the media.
You're talking about Wayne Simmons.
Yeah. And
he was fit. He was never in the CIA.
And the CIA is not going to say he's not there,
right.
Because if they start setting that precedent and saying, or he was or wasn't, then if they ask about somebody who was, then what's their response?
Yeah.
And if you guys are interested in that whole Wayne Simmons story,
so good,
which I was going to recommend. It's called I think it's called Imposter, the Spy.
It's really good.
And a guy, he's a New York Times journalist, Alex French. He spent a long, long time. It's like a 7 episode podcast. So. And like he unpacks the whole Wayne Simmons thing. I'm in one episode briefly. Really like untangling that whole like web of lies that Wayne concocted.
That part when he's talking to Wayne at his house.
Yeah.
And this guy Wayne is just like, he is locked into this fucking con. No ifs, ands, or buts. He's talking about just bullshit. It doesn't even sound like anything, really. He's doing this super secret thing that nobody knows about. He's operating in the United States. Like, I mean, who would believe that? But he's like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I was doing.
And you can see how it's like he's convincing to someone who doesn't know better.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to bullshit another CIA officer. It takes him like 2 seconds. Like, what the fuck is this guy about?
Yeah.
But like an average person's like, whoa, man, this guy's a fucking hero.
Yeah.
And it's also the interesting thing too is like faking being in the CIA versus stolen valor, pretending you're in the military.
Right.
Like I can, and anyone can do it doesn't even take a FOIA check. Actually, there's an office and you can call and get like a 1-page summary of someone's service, military service, confirming or denying that they were doing what they said they did. And then if you want to go further, you can FOIA documents and you can kind of get like their entire service record. At a certain point, you can even get like their like NCOERs, OERs, what do they call them in the Navy? Fit reps.
Maybe I don't remember.
Fit reps. So like I FOIA'd that stuff before. You can get that kind of stuff, but you like try to FOIA the CIA. Yeah. Like I want this dude's service records.
Laugh at you.
Get the fuck out of here. So it's a lot easier for dudes to fake being in the agency because like who's gonna say for sure?
Right.
And even within the people who really were in the agency, a lot of them, they know each other by pseudonyms. And like I've been through this. Like, you got to show people like a picture of the dude. They're like, oh yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah.
There's one case where I was talking to somebody, and their covers are lifted. They're living normal civilian lives now, and it's like, oh, do you know such and such? And they're like, I don't fucking know. And then I showed them a picture, and they were like, oh my god, I went to the farm with that guy. He was fucking hilarious, because they didn't know each other by their real names.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. Well, I mean, it's funny because, prior to 9/11, stolen dollar was a thing, but it wasn't such a thing.
Yeah.
And dudes would say, I mean, they probably still do, but I think most people that engage in stolen valor now, who are really deep in it, know better. But dudes would say, well, I was in a unit, so classified, and yeah, I went to jump school, but it's classified. It's like there's no secret.
Right.
Like if you went to jump school.
Right. I feel like if someone's gonna take it to the level where this guy took it, Simmons, he's gonna get found out.
It took a long time, though.
No, not Simmons. I'm talking like a guy who's like, oh, I was in SEAL Team 6 or I was in this place.
Oh, they'll get found out.
Like right away.
You see guys who are, sheriffs or even like running for Congress or whatever, who have gone for a long time with that lie, and it's not until they don't pass the sniff test with somebody that
or they get to a point where someone actually does a little bit of digging.
And then there are people who embellish their own record. They were a Marine, and that turns into, I was a Force Recon Marine. And
I feel like that's probably done way more.
And then like I know I've told this story before. Like I knew this guy who was legit in Special Forces. He was a Green Beret, and I guess he just couldn't help himself from telling me that he was in C Squadron in Delta. And I'm like, okay, so we're bullshitting. And I had no reason to really question this per se, because the other stuff checks out. And then I was asking him, like, oh, who do you know over in the unit? And you know this guy and that guy? And the only names he could give me were dudes who were KIA.
Right.
Guys who had died in Mogadishu, some guys who had died in training exercises. It's like, okay, dude, do you know anyone who's like still alive?
Right.
And he couldn't give up any name. And so I started asking around my contacts about him, and they're like, nope, never heard of him.
Yeah, that's weird, because like you're a Green Beret, like you're a badass already, dude. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay.
But you also, if you're gonna lie and say you were in Delta,
maybe
you
not.
Probably shouldn't do it through another special operations, especially a journalist who writes.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, maybe this is not the.
That's the worst person to tell.
Maybe this is not the venue.
Like he's trying to get your dick wet or whatever. I get it.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
But not an investigative journalist, right? That's
right. I mean,
it's not the right audience.
And on this whole subject too, like with journalists, with people who are in the military, with special ops, as much as there is a such thing as fake news, and there are bad journalists out there, I've also come across instances where, again, dudes embellish and they'll tell journalists all kinds of fucking war stories and shit, and some of them make it into print, and it's like, fuck, like really. And that's also on them not doing their due diligence,
right?
And like getting multiple sources and cross-referencing things. But it's like sometimes our guys are douchebags too,
And it's weird what people lie about. I mean, like you said, he was in SF. I mean, what about a guy who has 2 silver stars but decides to tell people he had 3?
Right.
It's like,
or what about like guys who did everything right, but they feel the need to like lie about war crimes and stuff like that to like make themselves feel like tough or something in front of civilians.
Well, like saying like they did something?
Yeah, or when they witnessed stuff. Like to try to like elevate their sense of self-importance, I guess. And it's just so fucking bizarre. Like, why would you do that?
I wouldn't know, but that's fuck.
It is weird, yeah.
Because you do things the right way, and you've been through hell like that.
Right.
It should be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It should be something that like
you're proud of.
Yeah. Not like, oh, I did this too, or I saw this.
Now, what's funny though is when you do meet somebody that you don't know who was in Spec Ops, and it comes out that you were both in, whatever. There's a massive sniff test that both of you are doing. I'm like, because especially if you're like you're in a like a group setting.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't want to outright call somebody a liar if you don't know they're a liar. But you're also so used to people lying about that. You're sitting there going, and then eventually, like you'll find something in common that you both, you know, a person or an op or something. That you're
a
like,
timeline,
okay,
yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right. This dude's legit.
I mean, if someone's bullshitting, they meet another person that's in Spec Ops or anything. I mean, they have to be freaking the fuck out.
Here's the thing: is that like Jack and I, because of our exposure, we know a lot of people across a lot of different branches and whatnot. But not every SF dude knows how SEAL teams are, you know, are formed, and you know, like, or every SEAL know how, you know, how SF is set up, or what.
Yeah, they won't know the nuances
unless you went through RIP or Ranger School with a guy. Like, you don't know dudes in other battalions.
Dude, you don't know dudes in other companies.
Yeah, and in Special Forces, it's even more isolated. Like, again, unless you went through the Q course with a guy or something, like, you don't know people in the other companies and the other battalions.
Well, I'm not even talking about like knowing a person, but I'm talking about like if like you're special operations from one branch, and you might not know enough to vet somebody else who's special operations in another branch because you don't really know.
And that's why I'm always really careful to say when people come to me all the time and they're like, "Oh, do you know Master Sergeant such and such from 5th Group?" And it's like, no, I don't know him. But I mean, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
It doesn't mean, I'm not saying he's not SF. Like, please don't take it the wrong way. It's just I just don't know him.
Yeah.
And that's all you should take that to mean.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know, we get the guys who are in the process of vetting somebody now, you know, and you know we have to reach out to everybody.
Yeah.
You know,
especially if we're gonna put it on the team house, right? Like,
100%. Yeah. I mean that would be a huge blow to our credibility because we don't know everybody. So you know, if somebody comes to us and not that this person necessarily said that they were a part of a certain organization or whatever, but if that's, you know, sort of the impression we get, and we run up the flagpole there, and our people, our friends or whatever, you know, run up because they all have reach back. Yeah. You know, they all have their communities, and they can
and I don't care if the dude was a regular Army 10th Mountain guy. It's a question of like misrepresenting yourself. Right. You know, that's the problem.
Right.
What's wrong with being a 10th Mountain
Nothing,
guy?
man.
Nothing.
Right.
Those guys crush
it.
Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like.
And we have our little niche on this show, but I mean, we should get some more conventional military dudes on. There's one guy I've been meaning to schedule who was, I can't remember what unit he was in, but he's got like some gnarly Afghanistan stories.
Dude, I still want to get somebody from the Arkansas National Guard on the show. Those guys, and they were hooking and jabbing. Crazy.
You know, one of my friends who got deployed to Iraq from Korea, he was like Camp Casey or whatever, and they deployed his unit to Iraq. And like the stories he told me was like his unit was so fucked up, and the stuff, like they did something called Mad Max patrols. That's what they called it. It was just like 2 Humvees going out into the city looking for fights. It was like, dude, what? Like they were just doing crazy shit. You remember when that those Army Safety Center was like distributing photos and like a memo around like, query, what's wrong with this picture? And it was some unit that had like flex cuffed Claymore mines to the sides of their Humvees, so that if like a VBIED got too close, like, I see the light, and like detonate claymores from like they're rigged on there like it's their fucking license plate. Yeah.
Somebody probably read something about reactive armor and thought, oh, well, we can do that.
Yeah. Science.
Yeah.
Another guy told me about, I don't know what unit this was. It was a guy I served with. And it was a conventional Army unit, and they had taken their PEC-2s and like taped them to their helmets. And he was like, you know, the bullets don't just like magically go to wherever you point the laser. And he's like, I don't know. Maybe they were like, the idea was they're going to use the IR flashlight on it under nods to like see where they're going. But he was like, it was like a whole platoon of guys with a PEC-2s, like 100-mile-an-hour taped to their Kevlars. And he's just, what the fuck's going on?
And I mean, Hey, Sarge, what? Ah! I mean, okay, so the PEC-2 is a pretty strong IR laser that I wouldn't want shown in my...
Doesn't it go on a rifle?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Supposed to. All right, let's see what else we got here. You guys have interviewed a lot of PMCs. What good guy characters from Metal Gear Solid would you compare them to? Old Snake. Like John Gardner, Eben Barlow might be an Old Snake. Yeah, those definitely some interesting guys, interesting careers. And I love interviewing guys who are quote unquote mercenaries because, like, I don't know, living the life the way that you choose, you know, out there flapping job to job. The guys who are good at it, you know, they're the guys who are smart about it, and then the guys who are like doing like silver core shit down in Venezuela.
Gonna do a history of the mercs.
You want to do that?
Hell yeah.
All right. It's going to take me some time to put that together. Do you have any thoughts about alternatives to the military's up or out personnel policy? DOPMA. Yeah, and I think there's some thought out there about reforming the structure and like career progression of how the military works, because and even at least in special ops, and I remember I think it was the commander of special forces, General Brennan, mentioning this, like, we have guys who don't necessarily want to be like sergeant major of, you know, a special forces battalion, but they want to be like the canine guy for group, or they want to be like the technical intel guy, like they want to be the dude that does Tekken or intel or whatever. Like, they should be able to have a career and go and be like, you know, continue to progress and become E8, E9.
Well, I mean, even an RTO, a radioman, or a mortarman or a machine gunner, I 100% believe that we should follow more along the British or Australian model, where, you know, a guy might not get promoted, but he can keep getting pay raises.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's good at his job,
goes home satisfied.
Job. You know, I mean,
it takes so much time for. You remember what Mike Edwards was saying? He was like, you know, the guys who are really good at Halo jumps, at MFF jumps, are the dudes like me who did it on the job for a while and then went and became an instructor. And like, by the time we're really good at it, we're retiring.
Right.
You know, and that's a same. I think to a certain extent you could make the case with other hard to obtain skills like snipers. Even medics, you know, hard to obtain those skill sets and maintain them and develop them.
Didn't Edwards say in the interview, didn't he say that at the tail end of his career, he went and was like the team sergeant of a mortar or whatever? Like, instead of doing...
He was a mortar platoon sergeant.
Is that like part of what the issue is? Like, he wanted to stay doing...
For his career trajectory, for his career track, he needed to get platoon sergeant time.
Yeah, so for those of you who might not know, up or out is a policy that you have a certain amount of time at a rank to get promoted to the next rank. And if you don't get promoted to the next rank, then you are basically out of the military. And the problem is not everybody is cut out for leadership.
Not everyone wants it.
Like, not everybody wants leadership.
To some extent, I was like one of those guys. Like, I looked around at like what sergeant majors do in the Army.
Yeah,
it's like, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, and if you have a guy, like I said, mortars is one of those things that people who are good at mortars, there's a significant difference between a mortar team that is really good and a mortar team that is okay, in terms of how quickly they get. Basically, get rounds on target.
How fast they are on the gun.
How fast they are on the gun. You know, getting it set up, getting it dialed in, you know, bubble level, dialed in, and then popping rounds. And if a guy is great at that and doesn't want to leave the mortar team, why would you say, okay, you need to be a team leader, or you need to be a mortar platoon sergeant, or, you know, whatever? I guess mortars don't have platoon sergeants, but I don't think. But
yeah, mortar section sergeant.
Yeah, mortar section sergeant. Like, why move a guy out of a job that he's good at and he loves, if he doesn't want to.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
And look, just because you can shoot a machine gun or a mortar or be a medic really well, doesn't mean that you're going to be a great leader.
Right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we're also having more and more enablers in special ops. So people who are like interrogators, interpreters, the K9 guys, the intel guys, the people who like fucking spin knobs and they listen to shit, like all that kind of like specialty positions. Maybe those guys get really good at that and they just want to do that and stay there. And that's a tremendous amount of like institutional knowledge to like hold on to there instead of losing that guy to go do something completely unrelated because his career sort of mandates it.
Right. It's a net benefit. I mean, tactically, right? Like if someone's really good at something.
Yeah. Or those guys will just get out of the military because some of those hard to find skills are very lucrative on the outside.
I mean, I feel like the only people who have it like really dialed in are in the Army, particularly are, and probably, I mean, maybe in the other branch too, but are warrant officers. If you're a warrant officer in military intelligence, like you're in, then you get to do your job until
you're 55 years old.
Yeah. And helicopter pilots, kind of the same thing. Until you get moved up or whatever. But, yeah.
Jake Baker asks, Jack, what's your off the record reporter's instinct about what happened with the CAG and Green Beret killings, drug ring at Fort Bragg? Well, it's not really off the record if I'm talking about it on a live stream. I'll just say I don't think it's a huge inference to make based on what's publicly known that it's probably, as you suspect, they're probably drug related, and I think that's what's going to come out of that unfortunately. Someone says your video description is lacking what this episode is about. Well, that's a good point because we didn't really know what it was about until we hit the live button. So we're making this up as we go along.
We're just bullshitting right
Yeah.
now. So if you have any questions you'd like us to bullshit about, feel free to put them in.
Another comment.
First, also, everybody who's watching this is a contributor to our Patreon. So we just want to say that we really appreciate it very, very much. So you guys, you enable us. You make this show possible, and we're eternally grateful.
Yeah, that's why we're here. We're doing 2 extra streams for you guys a month, and I know, like, this is a little haphazard and random, and we're just bullshitting here. But if you guys have any, like, since you are the customer, if you have requests or interests or anything, like Dave and I have been batting around some ideas. We might even play like some role-playing games on the stream once in a while. Just things like that, like just random or funny things. But really, like, we're super open to suggestions and what you guys want to talk about. So, let us know. Vulcan here asks, ever thought about interviewing an old KGB agent or Yugoslav equivalent, if you could even find one? I mean, a KGB guy I'd love to. That'd be fascinating.
Former FSU guy. Right?
FSB defector.
Yeah.
I'm
Jan.
for that. I can't wait for that.
It's gonna be interesting. And Jan, he also he wrote a comic book series called Red Atlantis. He's sending it to us.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'll make sure you get it. This thing keeps jumping around. Sorry, guys. Don't 18 alphas wind up doing almost 2 or so tours with an A team? 18 alphas will spend about, if they're lucky, about 2 years on an ODA. That's about it. If you get more than that, they're pretty lucky.
It's the same with a PL and Ranger, platoon leader and Ranger battalion. They're there for 2 years and then on to bigger and better things.
Might have missed it. If you could join a foreign soft unit, which would you join?
The Greek one.
The Marines?
Do they have other ones too? Raiders? No.
I know the Greeks have Marines, and I'm sure they have some sort of counterterrorism element in the country. I don't know what it is.
I don't know much.
I have all kinds of fascinations with like foreign soft units. I think the Light Reaction Regiment in the Philippines is really interesting. I think
who would you join? Like, where would if you were a 20-year-old man,
mm-hmm.
And you could join any soft unit in the world, any foreign, not one in America. They would let you go to your selection, their selection. You could pass it. Which one would you go to?
I think either the LRR or Kurdish CTG counterterrorism group would be like two like high end foreign units that they both do combat ops. Like you see some serious shit. Who else is out there that would be like really interesting? Like the Colombian Rangers is another interesting one, doing patrols out in the jungle. And they mix it up with bad guys too. Who else? I mean, we can go down. There's a litany of obviously very good European units. Some of them don't see a lot of action.
Yeah.
Some of them see very limited action, mostly because they became part of the coalition in Iraq or Afghanistan. But there are superb units over in Europe.
What about you, D?
Dude, I don't know.
Well, you've taught. You've been.
I don't know. I mean, because like SAS and Australian SAS, it's like similar.
That's where but I'd go to Australian SAS.
Aussie SAS.
I'd go to the Australian SAS
and,
just because I think it'd be, fun living in Australia, and it's a small unit, or actually maybe even the New Zealand.
Yeah,
SAS.
I've heard very good things about the New Zealand SAS guys.
All four of them.
Like
it is small.
It's like 10% of it. Yeah.
It probably is like no more than 50 guys, honestly. Yeah.
Is the Foreign Legions like considered as SOF or no?
No.
It's cloaked in some badass shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
I don't believe they're considered soft in the French system. France also has like some paramilitary units that are they're like classified as like experimental parachute units and stuff like that. They still call themselves 11th Shock, like Shock Battalion. That was like the old name for them back in the old days, and they I guess they still use that moniker just because it sounds cool. But yeah, I think the Philippines has a whole variety of really good units that do cool stuff. That would be one of my go-tos. And the Kurds also really good guys doing really good stuff. The Polish also interesting stuff going on there.
Join one, Jack.
Yeah, I know. I think I've just spent enough time in the Middle East at this point. I would probably run off to Colombia or the Philippines to try something different.
Yeah.
And I just really like the Filipinos, and I really like the Philippine units that I met over there. Really good guys. Huh?
You're looking for a bride, aren't you?
Well, it does have fringe benefits. Like I definitely felt that when I was in the Philippines, and I'm like kicking back a San Miguel on the beach, looking at this like aquamarine water, like, wow, this isn't like Iraq at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful country, beautiful women. Yeah, that would be a fun place to go. Let's see here. Thanks for answering. And note, I get not true OPSEC secret off the record. I was more curious for your take that might not rise to the level of publishing. Love the format of this. Thank you. Any interest in getting any woodland fire guys out, smoke jumpers or hot shot monkeys? I don't know what a hot shot monkey is, but a smoke jumper, yeah. Fuck
yeah, that'd be fascinating.
I'd be interested.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
How are SF warrant officers different than 18 Alpha and 18 Zulu? So an SF warrant officer is the assistant commander. So it's like the deputy commander of ODA. And it's designed so that you can do split team ops, like 6 guys and 6 guys, and have the commander leading 6 guys and have the warrant officer commanding the other 6. And in Garrison, the warrant officer is kind of like in charge of like long-term planning and things like that as well.
How long is a warrant's longevity on the teams? I mean, what, W1, W2, W3?
It's a W1. Not any longer than like the team sergeant or team leader, really.
On a specific team, but can they? Oh, okay. So
and then they're gonna end up going and being like the company warrant, and they might do some staff time and stuff like that. But I mean, a lot of guys, they go up to like E7 and then they go to warrant school.
Right.
And then they come back to the team as a warrant officer.
Yeah.
So they're maximizing their team time.
Yeah.
You know, which is what everyone wants to do is stay on, again, back to
Yeah.
upper routes. Guys, believe me, guys just want to stay on ODAs forever.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's at. All those guys like in staff, look, man, like seriously, like honestly, like they hate their life and they don't want to be there. And all those guys who are on staff, they just want to get back to a team as quickly as
I'm
they
trying
can.
to remember. I remember hearing about somebody who I can't remember if they went warrant or captain, but they they grew up in SF or did their E6, E7, E8 time in SF.
That's the letter, please.
And then either got commissioned or got a warrant, and then resigned their commission, so they could go back to the team. But I'm pretty sure, but they still got, when they retired, they still got paid at their highest rank. I remember. Anyway,
It's interesting they don't have that. Like they do it that way because like police departments don't do it that way.
right?
You want to stick
You have to
put
volunteer.
Yeah.
And
You wanna move
go
up.
detective and
sergeant and all that
yeah,
shit.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. What are they worried about? Because I feel like there's no benefit.
It's just the way that like the whole structure is set up for guys to like come. You spend a certain amount of time here, then you get promoted, then you move.
I mean, I get if you're a
He-
career guy, but
I think
like a
though
20-year
that
plus guy.
because I think it was Clinton that in, and I think that the aim of it was when they were downsizing the military, like how do we downsize
right.
the military? How do we get people out?
Huh.
And so it was the upper.
Huh. That makes sense then. Yeah, because you guys fucking train forever to be on an ODA or to be on a fucking team and do this shit, do it.
Oh my God. Jake is asking, what historical war would each of you wish to fight in? Vietnam, World War II, the Peloponnesian War? Like, bro, I mean, that's a tough question because like I'd probably be dead if I fought in most of those wars.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a one-way
I mean,
trip.
I'm from Sparta, like both parents. So,
Yes.
but like you get a fucking cut over there, you're fucking dead. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? There's no antibiotics.
I mean, yeah. What?
I have had a real fascination with the Vietnam War. It's like one of those things where, like the guys who served in Vietnam, they grew up like idolizing their dads who served in World War II. Right. Like that was it. That's what it's all about. I grew up, in the 80s and 90s where the generation previous had served in Vietnam, and so I had like a fascination with that. And my family friend who was a Marine in the war like showed me his photo book of like VC they caught in traps and shit. Like what the fuck, dude? So like that, it's like a lifelong fascination to me. And I've as I've said on your podcast, I grew up reading some of the books we have laying around here about LRRPs in Vietnam, and that's what got me like super fascinated in special operations. Like that there are these 6 dudes going out in Indian country, and like they won't even talk for a week to maintain like noise discipline, and everything's hand in arm signals, and they're like super stealthy, and just a discipline involved in it. Like so, like to go and like live that would have been that's like something I would have loved to do. Yeah. But now, of course, like we're talking about war here. Yeah. There's like all this sort of residuals that go along with that are not so cool and like not so fun. Like
that's the big one.
Getting smoked,
Yeah. I mean, and obviously also it's a matter of who you want to serve with, because you wouldn't want to have been with like 101st and or whatever. You want to be alert or SF, or something along those lines. Whereas you, a small team of guys, because even in Iraq and Afghanistan, if you ask 2 different people like what was it like, they're gonna tell you 2 completely different stories. For sure, yeah. Because everybody experiences it differently.
I'd go World War II just because like
the historical importance of it,
and like the Nazis are bad. Like it's full stop. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's what. And the Japanese were fucked up too. They were just as bad as the Nazis. Like we talked about that too on the podcast.
Yeah,
they're fucking animals. What they did to people. So I don't know. Like Vietnam, did we really need to be there? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like we talked about on the pod too. Like we could have flexed our muscles somewhere else. You know, against communism. So I'd probably go with World War II.
I don't know, man.
But I'd like to be like Winston Churchill in World War II. You know what I mean? Like
you'd
safe.
like to be in like long range desert group in World War II. You know, like those guys who are out there like desert rats blowing up Nazi airplanes out on the airstrip, or
that's cool.
You know,
I mean, if you would have asked me this question when I was 20 or even 30, then I probably like the Peloponnesian War or something like that. Now it all just seems so hard and so soft. But I can't imagine.
Well, that's why it's a young man's game, because like you get older, you start thinking all this stuff through. It's like, I don't know. Matt says he wants to know how to get into the Patreon. There's a link down in the description, man, if you want to check it out. Thank you. Oh fuck, this thing keeps jumping around. Sorry, guys. Definitely PLA soft unit. Know anything about Mexican Special Forces? Gaff, did you ever meet one? Or from the secret group that took down the traitors from Los Zetas? If I was a Mexican national, I'd enlist and join Gaff. I have never met them. I had a source, and I had a sort of project on deck one time to write about Mexican special ops the way I did about the Philippines and the Kurds and Koreans and these other groups. And it was just one of those things. It's my fault I never took it off the ground. So I don't know a whole lot about the Mexican special ops units, but they certainly have them.
Is that the unit that the president sort of doxed in the interest of?
I remember that.
Saying like we're not going to hide behind masks anymore. He's trying to. I guess he's kind of trying to reform it.
Did you read that story that like got really kind of underreported? Like the former defense minister of Mexico got bagged in America for drug trafficking charges, and then like a month later, charges dropped. See ya. Go. Head back. Yeah. It was like a couple.
Sounds like the DEA had some words with him, and now he has a new master.
Well, either that or the DEA had words with him, and somebody in Congress had words with them because their interests were too tightly tied.
So it's like, next month, charges dropped.
It's sort released. Of like, was it Nicolas Cage? Who was, where he was, Ethan Hawke arrested him.
Training Day. I know,
and he said,
Lord of War.
Yeah, and he said, in 10 minutes, somebody's going to walk through that door and tell you to release. I mean, I think that there's a lot of stuff like that goes on.
Andrew says, so when someone goes to warrant and their peers continue on as NCOs, does it become kind of a thing between two groups, tension, so to speak? It can.
What was the question?
He's saying, so like on an ODA or in special forces, you have this peer group coming forward, and then you have some who will split off and go warrant. And does there end up being tension between the NCOs and the warrants who are like boys? And that can happen if the warrants are dicks. Like if sometimes you have warrant officers who can be very arrogant, and they can be dicks, and they come back and try to like talk down to everyone around them. And yeah, it can become a problem. Usually it's not a problem, but it can be. What do you think the next big tech advancement for soft units will be? That's a good question. I mean, I think the obvious one, of course, is AI. That's going to change everything for the entire military. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think. Weaponry at night vision and that stuff. It's always like night vision is, from what I understand, from what I have been told, night vision is radically different now than what it was when I was in, and we lived under night vision. But now it's supposed to be pretty amazing. But in terms what you're talking about. Yeah, I think that I think it's in addition to the AI. I think the AI is going to be the backbone of it, but I think it's going to be augmented reality. Mm-hmm. So not virtual reality where you're immersed in something, but augmented reality. It's like if you play Pokemon Go and pick up your phone, you'll see your background with the what is actually there with the little Pokemon monster. I think that that augmented reality will be used for. I mean, can you imagine like not having night vision, but actually just having a visor that highlights your targets?
It'll look like those VR goggles out of like Ghost in the Shell or something.
Yeah, that highlights, your targets, that highlights hostiles, that highlights.
You use it to designate fires.
Highlights paths to, I think that, you'll see sort of like in Aliens where you see your teammates like vitals.
Right.
I think that
they're working on uniforms. It's like fabrics. There's electronics built into the fabrics that will monitor your vital signs.
See, the challenge with all of that is going to be that, for instance, China is so deeply embedded in our tech. We don't even know how, APT-1, Advanced Persistent Threat 1, is how we label them. I can't remember the actual unit name, but they're in China. And they're getting into government systems, and not always just directly into the government systems, but they'll get into third-party suppliers who may not have the rigorous. But the challenge with any of our technology comes in how, like if we have Blue Force tracking technology, right, which is letting us know where all of our friendlies are, how do we know that the enemy has not hacked into that? And they also don't, know where, or not enemies, but all our allies are, and, friendly forces.
Or they tag friendlies as hostiles.
Right. So, I mean, moving forward with technology, I think that it's going to continue to advance. I think it's going to be a real challenge, though, is how to deny our more advanced enemies access to that, especially when we are not taking, if we don't take a hostile stand or an aggressive stance.
And because of that, like the information environment is going to be so different, where when you receive an order over a radio or over email or whatever commo system you're using, there's going to be such increased doubt. Where is that order coming from?
Right.
Is that a legitimate order?
Right.
Is it really coming from my chain of command, or is it coming from the bad guys? My sensors, whatever sensors I'm using, are those accurate readings, or is my shit being spoofed? You're seeing that with the UFO stuff right now. And oh my God, UFOs! Like, bro, your sensors are being spoofed. You're seeing shit. The sensors are seeing shit that's not actually there. But like the environment, the electronic warfare environment we're going to operate in is going to be so complex, and soldiers out there trying to do their jobs are going to work in this sort of gray, nebulous, ambiguous environment where they're going to have to deal with high levels of uncertainty. And it raises all sorts of questions about the chain of command and control. I mean, are we going to have to give like verbal orders to teams and then just get like fire and forget weapons?
Right.
Because we're so used to having like persistent ISR, real-time intel and communications and like all that shit in a real shooting war with a nation state. A lot of that stuff is going to be unreliable. We're not going to be able to use it, or we're not going to be able to use it the way we have been.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's already hard enough in the fog of war to keep, blue on blue, to keep friendly fire incidents from happening. If you have Blue Force tracking technology or, things like that are telling you where everybody's at, if somebody can get into that system and start highlighting friendlies as enemies, it makes the technology, no matter how cutting edge it is, it makes it obsolete immediately.
Yeah, the IFF. Let's see here. Would Eric Robinson ever appear on the show? Love your Twitter interactions and discussions. I could try to twist Eric's elbow, see if he'd consider coming on. I might be able to swing that at some point. Hey Dave, probably for the 100th time, how are you feeling since your attack last year?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm good. I mean, I have the permanent hearing loss in my left ear, and I haven't had my hearing aids adjusted for that. But I mean, I don't know, Jack, have you noticed? I mean, obviously the TBI affected me, but I have a history of TBI. So, I mean, do you think, obviously I have a shitty memory, but do you think it's gotten worse?
No, I think you're pretty much back to the same old Dave.
Yeah.
As I told you at the time, I was like worried, like, is like Dave comatose? But like, even like the first time I talked to you when you were in the hospital bed, like you sounded like Dave. Like you didn't sound like
No.
you were like drooling on yourself and like
Yeah.
someone spooning applesauce into your mouth. Like,
Yeah.
you know, as bad as your injuries were, I was like, okay, well, he's still Dave, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I got really lucky. I had 2 doctors, you know, 2 surgeons looking at different things, you know, tell me that it was miraculous, you know, that I didn't, you know, have really, really serious long-term, you know, effects with my vision, with my brain, with everything. But thank you for asking. I appreciate it. Yeah, I was just so humbled by the support I got. I mean,
Sorry, my cigar is going out. Any thoughts on the new British Ranger Regiment being stood up? It's they're advisors. It's like the British SFAB.
okay.
Yeah, they're not like our Rangers.
Would you guys do anything different in your military careers?
Not really.
I had just the best time, the most interesting experiences. You know, even though I bounced around a lot, I loved everything that I did.
Got to do a little bit of it all too.
I did.
Yeah.
And I truly loved everything. I mean, you don't love every moment of it.
Yeah.
You know, but love it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I got to serve in 2 different SOF units in the Army over a fairly short period of time. I was only in for 8 years, and you know, got to do a lot in that time frame, and it was a great experience. Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like Dave said, some shitty experiences in there as well, but I mean, it's a tough job.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, you just have to learn to love the suck. You know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you go into it. You know, you're a volunteer. You're a soldier. It's a dangerous occupation. So you know, you go into
But
it.
I'll tell you, like, I mean, I don't know if Jack feels this way, but for me, the camaraderie, you know, the fellowship, and you just can't replace that. And it's not just soft. Like when I was a hard hat diver, even though that's still a small unit. There are like 12 guys in my locker, you know. But that camaraderie, it's just so hard to replace that, you know, in the real world.
Vulcan asks, ever see super soldier stuff making an appearance in the next decades, kind of like from your novel or the old 2013 Soft Rip article? Thanks for humoring my question. So he's talking about genetics, gene editing, gene doping, things like this. And this is a really interesting question because the Chinese are like, there's no like question of medical ethics. They're like developing superhumans right now. They don't give a fuck. We have medical ethics, rightly or wrongly. We have laws and rules on what we can and can't do, human experimentation and everything else. So this is like another, like, it's like a genetics arms race. Are they going to create like super powered humans by gene manipulation? Well, we're still here fucking dying of cancer over stupid shit that they cured a long time ago. I mean, they might have soldiers that are like literally have superhuman strength, superhuman endurance, because they've been like messing around with splicing DNA and things like this. So, I mean, that's a question that has not really bumped up into the mainstream yet. But that may be one of the predominant questions of the remainder of this century. And that may be the big ideological and scientific and ethical question that humanity has to answer in the 21st century. And if you're already thinking about that, you're ahead of the curve because society at large has not even begun to grapple with any of that.
Did either of you guys know the movie The Postman with Kevin Costner? Did either of you ever read
David Brin, right?
I don't recall the author. But I read the book years before the movie came, and it's very different, completely different. But it deals with that. It deals with these. It's an aspect. The postman himself, the guy who takes the mail carrier's jacket and stuff, is not a super soldier. But there are there are super soldiers. And because it's sort of this post-apocalyptic world, they set up fiefdoms or fiefdoms or whatever. But no, it is a very interesting question because and it goes back. I mean, it sort of goes back to the whole hacking thing too. When you have a country like China that does not have the same ethical foundation,
restrictions,
yeah.
I mean, they're on a pursuit course right now they're creating an ethno state, essentially. That's what you're seeing with the Uyghurs and Xinjiang, where they're trying to harmonize their society into a homogenous one,
right?
This unified one group of people, which is something a communist authoritarian government can do.
Yeah, and look, we know it's not going to work. In terms of, even if they do become the dominant power in the world at some point in another 50 years or 100 years or 400 years or whatever, in 1,000 years they'll fall apart. Like it doesn't work. You can't do it. Like
it's a 5,000-year-old country. So,
but I'm talking about
they've never been a global power.
I'm talking about maintaining that sort of hegemony, though, where because you're always going to have in any population dissidents. You're going to have the people who are out. I mean, you have your caliphates, and Islam. Like nothing can last that long.
And China's in for a bit of a shock as they try to supplant us as a global power. It's not so easy to.
Well, I think they're experiencing that when they go into these countries and lay out all this, money for infrastructure, and the money gets taken, or like they're dealing with the same stuff we have for a while.
I spoke to this girl. She's an analyst. She was a former CIA analyst. She's an analyst now for the Federal Reserve. And I was asking her about like China and like, will they supplant us? She's like, it'd be tough for them just because their currency will never be like the world's currency.
Who did you talk to?
I'll tell you after. I'm not gonna say.
I interviewed a woman today. She was a CIA analyst focused on China. Gail Helt.
No.
It was for a Stars and Stripes podcast I'm working on.
No, she's like not. She still works at the Fed and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, she was telling me that she's like, just because they manipulate their currency so much, like their currency will never be the world's currency or whatever. Like the reserve currency. That will probably hinder them in terms of like being the number one.
Gail kind of had the same. She didn't bring up the currency issue, but had the same kind of take that like China is not really up to the task of being a global power. They're going to try, but
they don't. They can they don't necessarily need to be a global power, because in terms of technology, they can operate as a very well-financed rogue nation and do a lot of damage to our infrastructure just through the technology alone. And it's interesting to me because as much as I try to avoid the news, things still pop up. And the New York Times was very pro-China during Trump's administration. Right? They were very easy on China, and anything that Trump said about China was in effect. And I had a feeling when Biden got elected, because Biden is like Trump, right? He's an old codger. He's
a corporate Democrat.
Well, but he's also he is. No, when I say he's like Trump, I don't mean in politics. What I mean is in personality, where like he when he talks to a factory worker, he goes, "You want to step out?" Stuff like that. Like he's
folksy.
Yeah, he's
I can't say Trump's folksy. I might be wrong.
He's kind of a blowhard, right? But he's also like gonna do his thing.
Yeah.
And so I had a hope that when he got elected, that he would kind of follow or continue Trump's sort of stance on China. And it looks like for the most part he is. Because he came out with the, that new, I don't know if it's an executive order or a bill or what, but where you're not allowed to, like Americans are not allowed to invest in any type of Chinese company that conducts any kind of surveillance or anything like that. But anyway, I think today or yesterday, the New York Times came out with an article about this is how China spreads their propaganda. So it's sort of like, well, as long as it's, and fine, as long as it's a democratic president who is against China, the New York Times will, you know, because we need more of that. We don't need to talk about Mao, who was what did they say about Mao? How he was the benevolent.
Oh, they've had. I mean, the Times has always had these like editorials where they like flirt with like East Germany. It's so weird.
But
I would challenge some of that, Dave. If you go back and look at their coverage of China going back the last like 5 or 6 years, I don't think you'd see a huge change. And I mean, they always covered China expanding into the South China Sea, doing all the violating international law, and that kind of stuff has always been there.
Has it? Yeah, I mean, you know me. I mean, I only see what I don't. I mean, first off, the Times behind the paywall.
I think like they probably didn't. They probably stayed pretty neutral, I guess, with like the whole trade negotiations and shit with Trump.
But it's probably more the antagonism towards Trump himself more than
Yeah, I think so.
China.
That's what I think too.
And listen, it's easy to do that, right? There's a story that can be made where when he's calling it the China virus and shit like that, like it's easy to make headlines like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
you don't need to be smart to get a headline.
And not every decision Trump made or his administration made was bad either. I mean, there were things that they did.
Right. I fucking hate Trump. I'll be completely honest. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
Like, he should be tougher on China, whether it's trade or whether it's whatever, like IP stealing and all that.
For the record, like I don't hate Trump. We are not a unified front. We're just, we just, we all agree on policies, certain policies.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could be like a more progressive person and be like, China's a fucking threat. Like, you gotta have blinders on to not know that China's a threat and like what they do by stealing our shit.
Yeah.
It should not be happening, and we should be. And I'm shocked that like the United States isn't more offensive in our cyber capabilities that we know of. I'm sure they are fucking with it for sure.
Again, it's hard for us to do what China does. I mean, they have like hundreds of thousands of like their citizen soldiers that just like hack the shit. Same with Russia, just hack the shit out of us. And for the last 25 years, they've tested us. They've tested very specifically hacking us and seeing what we'll do about it. Mm-hmm. And the answer almost every time is not a fucking thing. Mm-hmm. So you have all these people around. I mean, Putin, Xi, the Iranians,
North Koreans.
It's like a fait accompli where they're basically playing chicken with us, saying like, "Yeah, we did this. We invaded Ukraine and Crimea. The fuck are you going to do about it?"
Right.
And the answer more often than not is fucking nothing.
Well, Iran tried that and didn't work out so well for them.
Globally, though.
I mean, when they said there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff we could do. I think just people are kind of. They don't want a fucking war. Like, people don't want a full-blown war.
Well, here's the problem is if you draw a line in the sand, you have to be prepared to back it up. If you don't back it up, then...
And when you're dealing with dictators, like, you have to back them down.
Yeah.
Like, there's a certain point where you have to be like, hey, motherfucker, like, you pull this shit, and there's consequences.
I mean, honestly, one of the easiest solutions, not total solution, but one of the easiest ways to start solving the problem with China is to start going to Brazil or Venezuela, start getting our stuff manufactured someplace else.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
Mexico.
We need to get away from their manufacturing
without a question, because they definitely have the leverage in terms of like manufacturing and industrial.
Yeah,
like,
and that's a long-term program. Like, like we're like fucking 20 years behind the 8 ball on that. So like,
listen,
we should be doing that today.
Yeah, but
right
that's
now.
a byproduct of
agreed
growth, by any means necessary, growth and profits, and unbridled capitalism.
Well, and the thing is
we want to cheap
everything
shit.
that we send to them to get manufactured gets reverse engineered,
right?
And and that's where a lot of their tech comes from us.
John says, describe Ranger training, everyday life training courses, actual stuff they do. I guess he wants to know like day-to-day life in Ranger Battalion.
I mean, so I can only speak to what it was when I was there, which was pre-9/11. So, and it had a different focus. There was CQB or close quarter battle and the urban warfare stuff, but it was also still a lot of patrolling. And first off, until you go to Ranger school, every day is selection. Like, I mean, every day is, just boot camp in a way, and not sort of like with formations and stuff, but you're hopping and popping to your Spec 4s calling out to do stuff. Like, you're always busy. Shoot a lot. Do a lot of 2 or 3 day, exercises.
A lot of like 2-3 days straight out at the range, shooting day and night.
Yeah. And a lot of, a lot of humping. A lot of like, for us, like in South Rainier, and whatnot. You're just always on the go.
I'm going to try out one of these. Dave's girlfriend had us made these awesome Team House glasses.
Actually, yeah.
Have our names
with
on
your name on it. Yeah. So yeah, that was what it was like for me. It was easier for me than the other non-tabbed elements because I was 27, so I was old, and so I was given a lot of leeway.
That's love right there, Dave.
That's awesome. What was it like for you, Jack?
Very similar to what you're describing, except we were moving away. We didn't do a whole lot of like dismounted patrolling. It was moving more to like urban CQB, and it eventually evolved into our training more mimicking the operational environment we were going to go on. So it was like focused towards Afghanistan or focused towards Iraq, and specifically how we were going to operate. So like all the like pre-mission trained up like the platoon exavals and everything, where we were working with strikers, and driving around post and going and hitting mock targets, because in Iraq, when we deployed, we were going to be using strikers and driving around urban areas and stuff. So, but otherwise kind of similar to what you're talking about. A lot of like 2-3 day ranges, and Ranger Battalion gets their money out of you.
Yeah.
But if you like to train, you like to shoot, you like to do infantry shit and jump out of airplanes, it's fucking awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Wasn't General Peter Chiarelli reported proud that he had never received a promotion that wasn't above the zone? Oh, I don't know who that is. Let's see if your answer changes from earlier episode 3. What generals, field commanders would you choose to interview?
I don't even remember what I said in episode 3 to you.
No.
What generals or field commanders? Historically, 100%. George Washington, honestly.
Yeah. Patton was a big one for me. MacArthur also.
Yeah.
Ballsy son of a bitch.
Honestly, man, even Rommel.
I was thinking
Rommel.
Rommel.
You got to give credit where credit is due, regardless of.
On the other side, Otto Skorzeny also, who was an unrepentant Nazi, but with a very interesting. You see, the article came out that apparently he was working for Mossad at one point.
Oh no!
Yeah, after the war. Yeah, interesting cat. He would be an interesting guy to interview. But yeah, Patton is would be a big one for me. Eisenhower, even he was a supreme commander over the European theater.
Hannibal. Scipio Africanus.
Otherwise, quite honestly, you get to kind of see on the Team House like the guys I want to interview the most.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the pleasure, my pleasure in doing the show.
Yeah.
It's like the people I most want to talk to. Usually I'm able to get them. Some people need a little bit more convincing, and I'll keep working that. If you get one opportunity to observe a war and you are in a magical safe bubble, but only able to move around at the speed of whatever unit you're observing, what are each of your picks?
No doubt, Thermopylae.
Yeah?
Without a doubt, Thermopylae.
I'd probably go D-Day.
Yeah, I think both of those are interesting. And I'm also... I read some books about Alexander the Great. There's a great nonfiction book. I don't think I have it here. I think it's at my place. I can't remember the title offhand. And then, of course, Stephen Pressfield wrote a historical fiction book about Alexander, which is phenomenal.
Well, he also wrote the one about the Gates of Fire.
Yeah. So I have this interest in Alexander, a lot of it because there are these, it happened so long ago. So much is lost to history. To go and see no shit how it all went down would just be amazing. So I would probably choose to ride along with Alexander the Great's army.
Yeah.
In his his crusade through Eastern Europe and down into the Arabian Peninsula, through Iran, and eventually into India.
Yeah. No, that would be fascinating.
Got to drop out, but the structure is fun and valuable. Fun and valuable. Really leans into the team house concept, which I think a lot of us value. Keep it up and look forward to more. Thank you, man.
Is that all Patreon or YouTube?
This is all on YouTube. Will the military continue working on the railgun, and will it ever be used in combat? I sure fucking hope so. I love railguns. I think they're awesome. I think we need them. I wish the Navy could unfuck these railguns. I don't know what the hell the problem is. Like, I want fucking railguns. I'm like a child.
Yeah.
I was told there would be railguns. Where are they?
We were supposed to have jetpacks by now too.
Railguns. Think about it. What the fuck? I don't know. I'm a little emotional about that one.
Weren't the Nazis pretty close to
railguns? No.
Something? Maybe not a railgun. They had like some badass artillery piece though.
Didn't they have like some massive?
Oh yeah. They had the one on the rail. Yeah, it's huge.
So it was a railgun.
Well,
technically, yeah.
I have a friend who is his background is in ballistics, and he's a rocket engineer, and maybe he'd be a fun guy to have on one of these segments someday, because super smart guy, and he can get into like that whole history of cannons and artillery and ballistics. And I know one of the things he's interested in is that guy, what was his name? The engineer who he was developing a cannon. This was before the rockets were putting things into orbit for us. He was developing a cannon that was to fire objects up into orbit.
Whoa.
And he almost succeeded. He would have gotten there. It was very close before the program got shut down. But then he started flirting with Saddam, building a cannon for him so he could fuck up Iran, and allegedly Mossad had him taken out. There's a whole story there. John says, describe SF training, everyday life courses they take, that they do different stuff. They do specialty recon, SIF, any guerrilla warfare teams, any real UW teams now. How long can you be an 18 Bravo, 18 Zulu on a team? So like being a team guy, 2-3 years, and you're probably getting picked up for a SWIC tour. Or something else, and there are other ways to kind of fuck with that and try to extend it and stay on a team longer. As far as like day-to-day SF, it varies greatly.
A lot of donut.
Body stabilization pills, we call them, on Halo teams. As the 18 Bravo, you kind of have like a lot of you have a pretty good like authority, I guess, to like you schedule the team's ranges, and you can have a lot of say in how the team is trained. So it's kind of like all on you in a lot of ways. Like schedule the range, set it up, tell the team the schedule, figure out all the logistics, get the team out to the range, pick up the ammo. And the 2 18 Bravos are scurrying about those days trying to get everything done and not fuck it up, and get out to the range and then train your guys. So you can kind of like within, Army range safety standards, you bend the rules a little bit, but you can kind of train the way you want to train. And it's really a question of how ambitious you are and how motivated your team is to set up those kinds of training events. And then, of course, you have specialty schools that guys are getting sent off to all the time. There are all kinds of different courses that guys go and do. And then there's the pre-mission training, PMT, which that's oftentimes is done at a company level. And it's somewhat organized. You'll go out as a company and they'll have all these ranges open, and still the teams can kind of figure out how they want to train on those ranges. And then there's jumps, of course, you're always jumping. But I guess the big difference between like Ranger Battalion and SF, I'd say it's very like team driven. It was supposed to be team driven. And a lot of it is depending on how motivated and how hardcore your team is and how dedicated they are to going out and doing training. If you want to, sit around and eat donuts, you can. You really can.
It's a good job. You can get
it. and there are some teams that do that. Yeah. Honestly, there are. And then there are some teams who train just as hard as guys in Ranger Battalion.
Right.
And are just like, they're doing like hardcore PT every fucking morning, just thrashing their bodies.
Right.
And then going out training every fucking day. So yeah, it's just much more like individualized or decentralized is what I would say. Let's see here. Does the NSA have a ground branch unit like the CIA? If so, are they like HackerSoft or something? They do have field teams that like do electronic warfare or like tap into cables and shit like that. And they also have like their version of GRS, like security dudes, like ex-soft guys that go out with them and do that. So much smaller, I guess you could say. I think it's much smaller, but they do have. Yeah. I guess the answer is yes. They sort of have something like that.
And they probably have a lot of different like compartmentalized projects and programs and stuff like that.
Like shit I don't even know about.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that when it comes to secrecy, like probably nobody is more secret than say.
Yeah, like the stuff I was doing in Iraq, there was a whole NSA program where they were fucking with cyber cafes and that was like part of our intel that we used. And like I didn't, as a Joe, I didn't really know anything about it.
Yeah,
but that stuff was happening. Have any of the Vietnam vets ever confirmed the existence of Russians there? RT posts a video called USSR Secret Vietnam Soldiers Speak Out, soldiers that fought Americans in country, but RT can be BS. So that's a really, really interesting question. And I had this conversation with John Mayer once, and the answer is yes. There were probably not Russians ever in South Vietnam, but in North Vietnam, did Americans ever come like very close to Russians in like Laos and stuff like that? Like, yeah, that stuff happened. There were for sure Russian advisors out there. Yeah. That would have been like a big coup if we were able to take a Russian prisoner. And like the MACV-SOG guys were like cock-hard about that.
Yeah.
But, and allegedly they got pretty close a few times. Like I remember reading about one op where it was like they hit some like NVA compound and there was a field hospital. And like they found like Russian like military like a uniform or like paraphernalia there or something like that. Like they were very close to like snatching somebody up.
Yeah. Probably if they hadn't been so compromised, at the headquarter level.
Maybe. It's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah.
But as he mentions that RT article, that's Russian state-sponsored news, and they were coming forward and confirming it at one point in that article. So, yeah, I think it's pretty solid that there were Russians, and we came pretty close to contacts with them. Have you guys ever seen the stories about the PRC rewriting the Bible? No, I haven't seen that.
No, I mean, it
doesn't surprise me in the least. And Jesus is replaced with like she.
Well, I mean, you don't even have to do that much if you just make
Jesus a communist.
Yeah, that's all you have to do, right? Add some of Mao's words in there, or Marx's words in there.
Gordon's saying CCP isn't 5,000 years old though, and of course CCP came around in like 1950 something, but the state of China it's like been more or less intact as a state for 4,000 or 5,000 years, even though they had all kinds of civil wars and the dynasties would expand and contract and fracture. But I mean, it's been kind of a consistent culture for thousands of years. Let's see here. What else do we got? What was the deal with Desert Phase of Ranger School? Dave, this might be one for you, man.
I didn't do Desert Phase. It was gone before I got there. Apparently, the last Desert Phase class was the last hard class. I honestly don't know what I heard it was a massive suckfest. I don't know what the purpose of it was. And you say to train for desert warfare, but desert warfare has to be mobile warfare. Like it's, you're not out there you know, you're not doing foot patrols for 5 days generally. Like I mean, there's no cover, there's no concealment.
And like Delta did that, chasing around scuds and stuff, and so did SF a little bit. But as you said, I mean, that's
it's mobile though. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah.
So,
and it's kind of a dubious way to fight. Just like remember when we interviewed Peter McAleese talking about Aiden and how difficult it was operating out there.
See, I think Ranger School changed too. So in Ranger School, you used to learn survival techniques, right? You used to learn how to dress a rabbit, dress a snake.
We did a little bit of that in Florida phase.
I mean,
but it's like a day.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing is it. I think it used to have more of a survival focus.
Yeah,
and I think that's part of what like the Desert Phase. I'm not 100% certain. We'll have to get somebody on who did Desert Phase, but it was more like a survival event in a way. And then at some point, the decision was made that if you are behind enemy lines and you're just surviving, you're not doing your job.
Oh yeah.
That the idea is to move out, and then it became more of a patrol leader's course basically.
I had someone who was in the Selous Scouts tell me that, like, because they were like famous for like living off the land and all that kind of stuff, which is all well and good. But he was making the point, like exactly like you said, if you're surviving, like you're in that mode where you're like hunting and gathering food, like that's your full-time thing is surviving.
Right.
Like you're not really operational.
Right. I mean, the people who need to do that are like pilots who get shot down behind lines,
Yeah.
right? I mean, and even them, or even for them, they need to move to a corridor. Like they can't just stay where they are.
Yeah, it's escape and evasion.
They need to follow their E&E plan and get to a corridor where, surveillance flights will be flying over and stuff like that. But once they get to that corridor, then they need to stay put and they need to survive. For most small units, they're going in, they need to come back.
Nolan asks, any plans to get any more Rhodesians? I highly recommend checking out John Van Zyle's channel. Would be awesome if you could. That's a very unheard of conflict. Yeah, man. I have seen his channel. It's really good. He interviews a lot of dudes on there. He's not Rhodesian. He's South African, though. That book behind you, Recce by Koos Stadler. If you guys have contact info for Koos, I really, really want to get him on the show. That's a super good book. He's a South African Recce. They did some really like hairy operations, but yeah, I mean, we're always open to having Rhodesian veterans on the show. And I think I missed one here. Andrew, he says, what's the pettiest or most spiteful abuse of military authority that you have ever seen or heard of?
I mean, I'd like to say Shinseki taking away the Black Beret, but I don't know if that was.
Maybe it was spiteful. Maybe it was spiteful.
Yeah. I don't know. What about you, Jeff?
Man, I have heard some really, really fucked up stuff and really fucked up cases of retaliation. Maybe the worst one I ever heard of was a soldier. He told me this himself. He was raped, and his chain of command told him, like, we're going to make this right. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to take care of all of this. And nothing was happening. He went to a news publication, not me. This was before I made contact with him. And he was talking to this news reporter and telling him what had happened. When his battalion commander and sergeant major got wind of it, they made him sit down, call up the reporter, and retract the entire story right there in front of them. And then told them, like, move the fuck out. And they never did shit. Never did a fucking thing to stop that guy.
That's something else that's come up in the news recently. More talk about taking sexual assault charges away from commanders.
They
which
need to. They should have done it a long time ago.
Yeah. This from Mike W. on Patreon. He said, "Enjoy the improv." Gordon sent us.
Dude, I can't believe it's already 10 o'clock at night. Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
We'll wrap this up here, guys. A couple more questions, and we'll call it good.
You're There might not be much. I'm not on Patreon. I'm just looking at our. So
I'll take a look. Any thoughts on interviewing Army security agency guys? Yeah, I have thought about it. What's the most underrated unit in the U.S. Army?
in the U.S. Army or in the military?
I don't know either.
I mean, I think one of the most underrated units or organizations in the military are like Coast Guard, intercept guys. You know, the interdiction guys. Like before 9/11, those guys were seeing more combat than anybody. They were doing a lot. I don't think anybody ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Coast Guard in general gets no credit.
Yeah.
And they do a lot.
Yeah, there's like 3 separate interdiction units in the Coast Guard, and I can't remember all the acronyms off the top of my head. One of them focuses like solely on VDSS.
Mm-hmm.
It's like their special unit.
Yeah.
But they're legit like good at what they do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think like the most underrated is oftentimes it's the support guys. And we all have experience with shitty support guys, but like the dudes who do their jobs,
100%.
like are fucking invaluable.
Yeah.
And make things happen. And it's easy to get like bitter with like the guys who are like kind of useless, and like you go to the like motor pool, like I need to sign out this Humvee, and like, sorry, can't do it.
Even
like,
an
what?
admin clerk, a good admin clerk. I mean, I also think that, believe it or not, I think that Air Force Pararescue is underrated. Not in terms of, like people know who they are, they know their spec ops and things like that. But the missions, like their guard units, their guard unit in Alaska, their guard unit in California, like the missions that those guys do all the time, the hairy ass shit that they do to rescue distressed like boaters and sailors.
Did you see last year they did a free fall jump in Alaska to rescue a guy who's injured?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. They did a free fall jump like into the snow and treated this guy.
Jesus.
And then a helicopter came and picked him up.
Yeah. No, it's I mean, look, there are a lot of units in that do not get the profit. Simple fact.
So yeah, man, I think this is the last question. What's your answer to the cartels in your opinion? Pseudo ops. Like dealing with the Mexican drug cartels, I guess he's talking about.
Legalize drugs.
Yeah, that's the real answer.
I mean, you legalize and regulate drugs. I look at the crime that went away when prohibition was done away. I mean, you legalize drugs and you take away the scarcity.
The demand is crazy for drugs.
Yeah, and it's never going away.
Well, now, because of COVID and because of the difficulty in either manufacturing or transporting drugs right now, people in Brooklyn, people in Connecticut, people in this area have been dying from using cocaine that's laced with fentanyl. I mean, you legalize it and
you get the good shit.
Again, it's the war on whatever, right? We don't win these wars on drugs or we don't win them.
And the Mexican government's not on our side either.
No,
they're not. Like they arrested Chapo's son and released him because Sinaloa like amped up the violence by a lot.
Yeah,
and they're like, listen, we can't have fucking people decapitated every day.
Yeah. Look, you legalize this stuff and you take their life.
Or they become respected businessmen. That's what would happen.
Yeah, right.
You know?
All right, guys. So I hope you'll join us on Friday when we have the Team House Party, episode 100. We're going to have, 4 guests in studio. We're going to have, Ian, Scotto, Jim West.
Is Alana coming?
Alana. And Ian.
Bill Gage.
And Bill Gage. So we're going to have 5 guests. Me, you, and D.
What about everybody from the VFW or American Legion?
Oh, that's Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh. Yeah.
Mhm.
So Josh will be here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So
Sorry, Josh.
it's going to be a full house. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be kind of pandemonium. We'll have some drinks. We'll have some cigars. We'll order some pizzas or something. Be a good time.
It'll be quick, right?
So, all right, guys, thank you for joining us. Again, if you have any suggestions for, these bonus segments, let us know. Happy to answer your questions, though. And we'll see you again on Friday. Take care. All right.